avoiding each other separately. That's one thing that we can say for sure about electrons. So I hope you enjoyed this introduction to basic atomic properties and elements. Thanks for watching. Hi everyone, it's Mr. Sinti, and today I get to talk to you about conservation biology. Conservation biology is becoming so important these days that it's sort of developed its own discipline. Although I'm going to consider it under the umbrella of ecology, it really stands alone because of its importance, and it's been emerging over the years, and now it's becoming one of the most important branches of biology. And let's get into that conversation. Like, why would something called conservation biology become so important? Well, the word itself means to conserve or to protect the diversity, the biodiversity that we have here on the planet Earth. Because as it turns out, we're in a little bit of a crisis here. There's a biodiversity crisis, and we're experiencing a rapid decline in biodiversity on the Earth. And not to say that this hasn't happened before in time. You know, life has been on the Earth for about 3.5 billion years, and so we've seen extinction before. We know that it occurs from the fossil record, but it's occurring this time in a really rapid event. And the reason being is that it has to do with one species in particular, and that's humans. It seems that humans are being the cause of this rapid extinction, and so if we're the cause of it, we have to take responsibility to sort of, stop that. And so biodiversity can be studied on 3 different basic levels. And so one of the levels, the largest level, is what you'd call community and ecosystem diversity. So in other words, you want to protect a redwood forest, because by protecting the redwood forest, you're really protecting all of the organisms that are living inside of that forest. You can also protect the tropical rainforest. You can protect the chaparral. You can protect the coral reefs of the world in the ocean. And so these are particular areas of hotspots that are crucial, because there's a lot of species diversity in there, and they're essential. So you can go at it that way, or you can look at protecting individual species. And so the species diversity is rather important too. So you can try to save the redwood, protect the redwood squirrel, the fern, or the frogs, banana slugs. You can look at species, protecting them individually. Okay, and that's important too. Or you can look at within a species, like for example within the whole population, genetically there's diversity there. And so the greater the diversity within the population, the better the whole species is going to be doing. Because again, genetic diversity is rather important in terms of survival to withstand sort of threats to the species, in terms of, like for example, disease is an example of one of those. And so, why would we care about protecting biodiversity? Well, I mean, if you turn it upon ourselves and make it sort of human-centric, our own welfare is dependent on biodiversity. And so, I mean, it's worthwhile to protect in and of itself, but I'll just turn it into human-centric for a second. So for economic reasons, we want to protect biodiversity. Like, for example, just having a lot of birds and insects and a diversity of that will help to reduce, pests that are attacking our crops. And so birds alone save farmers millions of dollars that would be otherwise lost to insects. And so for economic reasons, we need to protect biodiversity. I mean, this is really, on a large scale, this is really important to some countries. Like, for example, I'll just throw it out, Costa Rica in Central America. It's really economically important for them to maintain their tropical rainforest for ecotourism. So it's valuable to not disrupt those ecosystems. And then this is a huge one for medical purposes. We get a lot of our pharmaceuticals and therapeuticals from plants. And so it's very difficult to come up with these medicines in and of themselves. And so we could sort of discover, either by design or serendipitously, we could discover some important drugs that could fight off, for example, cancer. And a good example of that is something called Taxol. And Taxol came from isolating this really interesting ring structure from the Pacific yew tree. And so it turns out that is a really important medicine for fighting off cancer. And it's important for, like, ovarian, breast cancer, lung cancer, and prostate cancer. So it's really critical. If we lose trees, we could possibly lose cures for future diseases and ones that are with us. And so we're really curious about this. And so if you don't mind me indulging a little bit on something personal, but I have the privilege and fortune to be able to teach a class on conservation biology, but it's really a biotechnology class in disguise, because instead of just going over the principles of conservation biology, we're out there doing it. We're out there protecting species. And what we're looking at is we're studying genetic diversity, and we're studying it within the population of coastal redwood trees. And so again, what we're doing is we're isolating DNA from these trees, we're crushing down the needles, and we're analyzing to see how genetically similar members are in a particular grove. Because the more diverse, we're thinking the better that population will be in order to survive climate change or an invasive species or disease. So we're studying these populations of redwood trees. So the loss of the genetic diversity of the tree is important, not only to protect the redwood, but again, the redwood is sort of like an umbrella. It protects everything within it. So you save the redwood tree, you really save the entire community. So it's extremely important. So I'm fortunate to be able to be researching in this area. And so the loss of species diversity is really important. Again, not only just the redwood trees, but it's important for all species to be preserved. And so the United States is actually entered into this conversation. They've come up with the Endangered Species Act. I'm not sure if you've heard of it before, but maybe you have. And so we can start to classify organisms based on their number as either being endangered, in other words, close to going extinct, or threatened, meaning likely to become endangered in the foreseeable future. And so if you look up a particular organism on Wikipedia, it'll actually give you their status in terms of if they're threatened or if they're endangered or if they're doing okay. It's kind of interesting. This is an example locally. I mean, this is the California grizzly bear. And you're like, wait a minute, California grizzly bear? I didn't know there were grizzly bears in California. There used to be. They're extinct in California. Fortunately, they're not extinct